Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I am joined by the lovely Joe, otherwise known as JCM Berne, to celebrate their release of partial function. My apologies.
My
And
postal worker. That's the sequel, Parcel Function. I'll talk about postal workers with martial arts skills.
excellent. You've found the Easter egg here.
You heard it here first, people. Mail carrier fiction. I'm gonna start a thing. It'll be a whole
Excellent.
genre. So fun.
So, we are here to chit chat about your books, your writing, but also to celebrate the launch of Partial Function. Congratulations, Joe.
Thank you so much. I have
And
the
yeah.
first physical copy to ever exist
Ooh.
with the not for resale thing, which no one else will ever see because that's only on the author proofs. And you may notice the white lettering instead of yellow. The yellow's on the ebook. Yellow looks better electronically. And I spent like 2 weeks trying to decide which color lettering. I polled everyone I know, and I got so many different responses. But finally, I decided that this looks better when you look at it longer. So, like if you want this on your shelf, you want to gaze at it lovingly. You have the white lettering, and it does grow on you. But if you get a quick glance at the ebook, the yellow looks better. So that was my. Oh wow, we got a bunch of comments.
We do. We are joined by a bunch of lovely folks in the chat here.
Ganesh has his real name on the thing. I met Ganesh at Dragon Con. We hung out quite a bit. Lovely man, and we're all just trying to. He's like, oh, it's me, and then he's like, oh wait, and he pulled out his Deadpool hat.
Yes.
Like, oh, it's you, it's Pippin. It was like, get out the name.
Oh, that's awesome. There's another Easter egg for people.
Thank you guys. Thank you. Yeah.
So, Joe, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, your books?
I am JCM Berne. I am the author of The Hybrid Helix, which is 4 books now, starting with Wistful Sin. You can see them over Kay's left shoulder, them lined up, the first 3.
I have a few I need to get to complete the collection so far.
Shadow of Hyperion's coming out. Book 5, I'm working on, and we'll get there. And let's see. I just released Partial Function, which I just showed everybody. It's a standalone. Very excited about this. I can talk about why I wrote it a little bit and what it's about. Yeah, jcmberne.com. I have a website. I do YouTube. I'm on Twitter. Oh, geez, I don't know. I'm a dad.
So what?
Intros are hard.
Why don't we start with off the cuff question then relating to that? How do you do it all?
My wife works a lot. So she's a pediatrician. She gets a lot of hospital shifts. So she's away a lot. So that really helps. And I work from home. And so obviously I have a job. I have to work during the day. But if I had to commute to my office, that would be like 3 hours a day on a train or several trains, right? So I save that by working from home, and honestly, and then I get to write and do this other stuff, and I'm never doing everything at once. Like if I'm really writing a draft and I'm writing 3,000 words a day, I'm not making YouTube videos that day. Everything gets. I'm not a slow and steady kind of person. Like I'm not like, oh, I'll write 1,000 words a day and I'll spend 10 minutes editing. It's all or nothing for me. So I'll just. Oh, thank you. Oh, wow. All these cool.
We've got a few people in the chat here. Tori can't stay, but congrats. And
thank you, Tori.
Yeah, thank you. And Ganesh shares my copy of Partial Function is coming on Friday. Very exciting. Andrew, we know you're banned, but hopefully it'll be added to the shelf after that.
I'll send you a shout out, Andrew. You just got to give me a few more, another week. Like I've been terrible about sending out. People have asked me for book plates and hardcovers, and I've just been bad. I have envelopes in a box behind me from Amazon. I've just been a mess. I'm sorry. That's the other side of it, right? How do I do everything? I don't do everything. I leave 20% of the things just undone. I just say apologize.
No apologies necessary. That's life, right?
Yeah.
You published a new book. That's where your time has been going.
Two
I will
books in
take
3 months.
stories.
2 books in 3 months. That's more than most people do. That was an accident, though. That wasn't a good idea. Partial Function should have come out like 8 months ago, but I didn't get the cover and the editing lined up. Totally my fault. So it all came out
Uh,
of order. It's fine. It's fine. Anyway.
all right. Yeah, Andrew says it here as well. It's not like you're busy or anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's go back. I always like to start with where your passion for stories began.
I mean, I don't want to say it's typical. I think it's typical. Maybe it's not. But like, okay. So I was a kid. I was socially awkward and like not athletic. And when you're socially awkward and you're not athletic and you pick up and you go to the store and you're like looking for something, you don't have friends to hang out with, so you're looking for something to do. And I was literally picking books up off my parents' shelves, like Lensman. I don't know if you ever read. Lensman is like a old space opera, like super over the top space opera. Like
Oh wow.
main characters are like perfect in every way, and like the bad guys are despicable and every. It's really pulpy, like action adventure stuff. But the heroes
Mm.
were way larger than life, and I just, I'm like, wow, I wish I were larger than. It's so appealing. It's like this power fantasy, like they're the bad guys. I'm gonna go crush them, and they crush them, and it's like it's so satisfying when you're 10 or 8. I don't know how old I was when I read
Yeah.
Lensman. I was pretty young. I don't really recommend people go and read them as an adult because I don't think they hold up great. But
Okay.
but I mean all that stuff, John Carter, and then you're a kid. I don't think I was bullied more than other kids, but stuff happens. You're a kid.
Yeah.
And I just found these stories so appealing, and I fell in love with them, and I never really fell out of love with them. And I don't. I became a little less socially awkward when I got older, but I still like the superhero stories and the science fiction stories. Give me a main character with a ray gun or a sword or a cape. I'll take them all like on different days. And so I never really lost it. There was a 2-year period in college. I was like, I'm going to read real literature, and I'm gonna read the kind of stuff that they teach in an English lit class,
Mm.
which was not genre fiction. And I spent like 2 years doing that, and then I said, this is ridiculous. So I
Mm.
I stopped doing. I was a philosophy major, so I had to read some of that for my classes. But then for pleasure, I'm like, what am I too grown up to read a Wolverine story? No, that's crazy. So I went back to it. So I had a short break, but I'm 53, so a 2-year break out of the last probably 45 years. It's not a big break. So I fell in love with these stories back then, and especially like the martial arts stories. And I like the stories where I always make this distinction. I like the stories where it feels like the main character sort of earned their capacity, or I feel like you could like become more like them.
Mm.
Like a martial arts story to me is always better than like a Superman story. Superman, why is Superman so tough? Because he was born tough, right? He was born an
Yes.
alien. He's got these powers. He didn't earn them. He didn't like win them in a he's just, oh, great. Like it's like a big guy like on a football team. Like, okay, you were born a big athletic dude. You're better than me at football. Congratulations. That's not inspiring. But like you watch a Bruce Lee movie, and the characters are
Mm.
like they work. There's this, he'll say in the movie, right? This guy trained hard every day for 10 years. Now he's can kick ass, right? So you're like, that always appealed to me more.
Mm. The underdog kind of story where they had to work for it and find their place or earn their place, I should say.
Yeah, the underdog, and it's attainable in a different way. This this
Mm.
this this sort of like, oh, if you work hard, you can be tough too. What you
Mm.
get from a martial arts story, but you don't really get it from like a Superman story. It's not like, oh, Jimmy Olsen really tries, he'll be able to fly. No,
Yeah.
Jimmy Olsen's never gonna fly. He's never gonna go toe to toe with like whoever like Superman's enemy. He might be useful, right? He might get kidnapped and make Superman find whatever. Right? He might do something good, but he's never gonna really be like fighting alongside Superman. It's never gonna happen.
No.
But
He's not gonna just one day wake up with laser eyes.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure someone's like, oh no, there was that one issue where Jimmy Olsen got laser vision, of course, but he didn't.
Of
Yeah,
course.
because but there had to be some kind of lucky accident. He didn't just train up to it. But you watch your Bruce Lee movie and you're like, okay, Bruce Lee is just a regular guy, but
Mm.
the character he's playing is just a regular guy who just worked his butt off and now he's avenging his teacher or he's fighting to whatever he's doing. So I'm dating myself with the Bruce Lee references, but I'm old, so I get to do that.
Well, no, it's fair because I think there is definitely a different storytelling style in those two mediums,
Mhm.
in how the characters go along. So I think that's absolutely a fair uh,
Yeah.
road to go down,
Yeah, it's
right?
funny because I'm writing. I mean, I write about Rohan. Rohan's, a lot of his powers come from the fact that he's an alien or half alien, right? But
Mhm.
when he's facing the other hybrids, he's not just born stronger than them. He has to outwit them. He has to come up with a clever
Mhm.
plan. He has to do something unexpected to beat them. So to me, that's what the satisfaction is.
Yeah,
When
and
they
we
get a
have
crossover that ties in the two series. Thank you, Quinn. Appreciate that.
a few more congratulations. Thanks for stopping in,
So
guys.
nice. Andrew came up with the title, Partial Function. He was a beta reader, and I was never happy with the old title. It was one of the few. I usually
Okay.
like my titles. I usually come up with titles, and I'm very pleased with them. Very pleased with myself. Very arrogant. But with this one, I didn't like the old title. I never did. He's like, "Why
Okay.
do you call it Partial Function?" I was like, "Dude, that is so perfect." And so I owe it all to Andrew. Otherwise, this book would have a worse title because I don't think I ever would have thought of that.
Andrew is just a pillar in the indie community.
That is true. That is
Absolutely
100%
is.
true in many ways. One of the most supportive people you'll ever meet.
Uh,
Um,
yeah.
but definitely helped me out because he also gave other input to the book other than the
Mhm.
title. I don't want to minimize that.
No, that was his one contribution. You
That's the
can't take that.
long term goal is that Rohan will get dog. You heard it here first. No, I'm totally kidding. That will never happen. There's no crossover. I'm not even willing to commit that these series take place in the same like span of time. They could
Mm,
be thousands of years apart. If you
okay.
read Shadow of Hyperion and you read Partial Function, there's a link. They're set at the same roughly the same place, but I am not willing to commit that they are in the same era. So I don't plan to really cross over the character. I really wanted to write Partial Function as a standalone. Like this is its own
Mm,
Angry Ruja Mom. Yeah, that was the so Ganesh is asking about Angry Ruja Mom. So because I didn't have a title, I had to come up with a working title, right? Because I'm like, oh, who wants to read these 4 chapters and tell me if I'm crazy to continue with this? So I was pitching this around a lot to a bunch of people read it. Katie Andrews read it. A few other people did. I don't mean to, I'm sorry if I'm forgetting people. And I had to call it something, so I called it Angry Ruja Mom, which tiny part of me think it would be hilarious to release it with that title, but it really wouldn't have been completely appropriate. But it was fun.
right.
It was
I
fun.
mean, I think it would have been cool as like a series name,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
Just as like a little tidbit to that original
yeah.
working title.
A little wink, wink. I don't know what kind of mark. I don't know who would have. I feel like it would have driven away too many of the people who would have ended up liking it, who wouldn't have gotten the humor without having read it first.
Right.
Right?
That's
And so,
fair.
yeah. So I don't know. Maybe it would have been fun, but I never did. I didn't do it. So I know. Angry
Sorry,
Rouge.
Bo.
Yeah, Angry Rouge Mom did not last. It's it's not it's never going to be on there. Yeah, and then I don't I'm still not I'm still not 1,000% pleased with what I call this series, but I'm good with it. So I don't know if it's going to be a series. That's another story.
Okay.
But
All
it's
right.
really a standalone. Right? I mean, the book ends. It
Yes.
finishes, right? There's no
It's a satisfying standalone.
yeah. Thank you. I mean, but that was very deliberate. Like I'm not trying to. Oh, this is a series. Maybe people like that. I'll write 10 more. That was never the plan. The plan was to
Right.
tell a story, and it finishes. And I think I have an idea I can turn leverage into like a sequel, but it really will be another story with these characters. And I'm not even sure I'll do it. I think I will, probably.
You've essentially made the foundation of a sandbox.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there might be some playing around, but that's hopeful to the readers, right?
Spoiler. At the end of the book, some people survive.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
So
Yeah.
this right, everyone right, I gotta tell everyone some of the people they live. So there's more stories we can tell in their lives. So
There you go. So I wanted to just touch on some of the like going back to the passion and where it all started,
yeah.
but I'd love to know if there were any books, any other forms of media, shows, anything like that that helped to really inspire your own writing. So if it was something specific, it was something more broad. I know you've mentioned a couple of references, but if there was something that really was a foundation, I would really like, I'm curious to know.
There's a lot of stuff. That's part of the, like, I always forget, because I mean, I've been reading and consuming stories for a long time, right? That's a lot of stuff. Like, I've read a lot of manga, I watched a lot of anime, I watched a lot of kung fu movies. So like all of that is a big influence on this. There's less of a Bollywood influence on Partial Function than there was on the Hybrid Heat.
Mhm.
Just different influences. But there's elements I took from a lot of those places. Like, the way I blurb the book, which is, it's taken if it starred Michelle Yeoh, but was set on a Jurassic Park inspired cradle. Like 3 out of 4 are movies, not
Yeah.
books. And the only book in there is Cradle, and this isn't really a progression fantasy. So my Cradle reference is,
Mm.
it's high power, like high magic martial arts, but it's not really a
Mm.
progression story. Like, it's not everyone levels
Mhm.
up every third chapter. That's not really what happened in this book. Um,
Right.
so I was clearly taking a lot of inspiration from films,
Mm.
and yeah. So there's so many books that I've read over the years. There's a lot of anime and a lot of manga, and a lot of the martial arts stuff. I take from things like Naruto, which is a manga and an anime,
Yeah.
and they're big on, like, I like Naruto because, like, they'll have, like, each of the family within the village will have, like, a martial art, and, like, we control sand, and then here are, like, the
Mhm.
10 techniques we use that use sand, and then
Mhm.
someone else will have, like, or our family controls shadows, and here are the 10 different, and they're different levels, right? So the elders use this 10th, the super powerful shadow technique, and we use the kids use the simple shadow, and, like, that's kind of how I structured the martial arts in a way.
Right.
You've got, like, the bat guy who uses sound attacks, and he does different stuff, and so but I'm sure other places have done stuff like that. Hunter x Hunter
Mhm.
does stuff like that. So
It's a popular style with animes and
yeah,
mangas.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I took from there. That I took from there. The
Okay.
martial arts is not realistic, and I hope everyone understands that. They're the opposite of realistic. It's
Yeah.
very, there's magic in everything they do. There's no there's no legit stuff in there.
So we actually have an excellent question that just came in here. So where should I start with your work? Heard so many awesome things. I want to join the party. This is an excellent party to be a part of.
Yeah, only two places, right? I would start with Wistful Ascending, or I would start with Partial Function.
Mm.
The first chapter of Partial Function, I've been tweeting. It's free if you want to read just that. Partial Function is a standalone. It's a fantasy novel. It's very Asian, martial arts inspired, and Wistful Ascending is a superhero science fiction story. So if one of those settings appeals to you more, I would start there. But I would not start the Hybrid Helix anywhere other than Wistful Ascending. There's a short story, Zero Twist. You can get that by signing up for my newsletter. I like it. I don't think it's fantastic. I don't. Most people like it, but no one loves it. So
Mm.
I'm not a short guy. Like, I am a short guy. I'm a very short guy. I mean, I don't write short fiction well. Like, it's not my strength. So take that for what it's worth. But I would say start with Partial Function or with Wistful Ascending. Definitely,
Mm.
because you really want to read. If you're going to read the Hybrid Helix, you really want to read it in order, because there are reveals that happen as you go through the books
Mhm.
that are they're not worth skipping. You don't want to skip around. You'll enjoy them
No.
more if you get them as they come. Um, the Seventh Dynasty and the earlier Surge. Yeah, people sometimes, it's funny. People ask about, like, oh, I want to hear more about, like, what Rohan was like as a teenager, and I'm like, I don't know.
Mm.
I don't really plan to do that. I like the
Okay.
implication. I like this sort of, you infer what things were like. Like, Rohan
Mm.
went through this 10-year span where he was in the military, and he's
Mm.
clearly traumatized by it. I don't really want to write those stories. I want you fill them in. You figure out, like, why is this guy so, like, where's his PTSD coming from? I don't know if it's really
Mm.
PTSD, but whatever it is, you can imagine, and you get, like, bits. But I'm not going to write, like, a 10-book series about Rohan in his 20s. Like, that's never going to happen. The Seventh Dynasty and the See, the problem is, if I have to write a story in detail about the Seventh Dynasty and the Old Surge, then I've got to figure out what happened, right? You're attacking
Right.
lazy world building. You know, uh,
Come
it's
on,
not.
Joe, get on that.
Yeah, yeah. because I don't write this stuff where I'm like I figure out in detail, like chronologically, what yeah, what exactly what happened and the names of all the clan chiefs going back 10 generations. I'm not the kind of person to have that stuff on a spreadsheet somewhere, unless I really need it. Yeah.
I hope you enjoy it. And I think it's John, right? Is it John? If I'm getting your name wrong, I am so sorry, but I think
I
I
think
saw I met you as John.
John on some other talks.
Tori, yeah, Tori had him on.
And no, someone else talked to John.
Oh, okay.
No, I can't remember who it was. I don't watch.
And
I can't watch all the YouTube. I can't watch all the booktube I'd like to. I really enjoy it, but
yeah,
I have a job. I'm
that's it.
writing. It's not a rhyme. I'm working on a third project. I'm like, I don't have time for everything I want to do. Thank
Time
you.
is finite.
Yeah.
So Anita, yes, Rohan and Wei Li. And yeah, I mean, I can understand that. I imagine they're brutal times, like you said. And I've found with your storytelling is you really like, or you seem to like to balance the fun and engaging storytelling with a little slice of a deeper tone to it. So that it doesn't dip so far into the dark side, but you can still have fun and enjoy the experience. It's not one way or the other.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to write a traumatized character, but he's not. He's not like sitting around all the time like self-destructive and depressed and like wishing he were and like drinking himself into oblivion. Like I didn't want
Yeah.
to. That's a perfectly valid character. People write that
Mhm.
character all the time. That's great, and I'll happily read that. But I didn't want to write it. I'm going to write a guy who's more or less doing as best as he can, and
Mhm.
more or less doing okay.
Yeah.
Traumatized, but yeah, but
But
he's
trying to be better.
trying to be better, but also mostly succeeding to be better, right? Mostly succeeding to
Mhm.
be happy. And that was the story I wanted to write, for better or for worse. I mean, I'm also not an expert in PTSD, so I don't know. But yeah, I don't really want to write a book about a long, dark, chapter in his past where he's like,
Mm.
depressed and going through savage times because that doesn't sound like fun. And I try to write fun stuff. That's another part of my,
Oh,
my goal.
and I think you're pulling that off. So, um, I do wanna ask you, and I'm gonna turn it into a two-part question just because, why not? It's fun. So apart from your own characters, which superhero is your favorite? And, if there's a particular reason, feel free to share.
I have such a hard time with this. I really like the Griffin, who almost no one has heard of, because he
Okay.
only was in like a 12 issue like series from DC
Hmm.
30 years ago that almost no one has read. Um,
Okay.
cool character, but nothing ever happened with him. From like popular like characters, like Marvel characters, I'm like a big fan of Wolverine and
Mm.
Surtur. I mean, there's so many Wolverine stories. There's so many versions,
Yes.
right? But the the specific ones I'm thinking of, like from the 80s, from like the Frank Miller limited series, like when Wolverine was fighting ninjas. He's a cool character. He's
Mhm.
short. He's skilled. It's that he's very like he's invulnerable. Like you can't really kill him, but when he
Mhm.
gets hit, it hurts.
Mhm.
Unlike you get like his teammate Colossus, made of
Yep.
organic steel, whatever that means. I instead of chemistry to know that makes no sense, but that's fine. But bullets bounce off him, so it doesn't really
Yeah.
hurt. Wolverine will get shot, and he may heal, but it hurts, and it
Yes.
adds a dimension to the whole thing. And then what they did with him, the idea that he can heal, and that therefore people can mess around with his memories by damaging his brain, and then it heals so he can still function, but
Mm.
it's lost as. I love those stories where the past comes back to haunt you, and you've got to figure
Yeah.
things out, and the little reveals. Oh, actually, used to work for these guys. Oh my god, those stories were fun. I like those stories. So I'm a big fan of Wolverine. There's a lot of Marvel. I like Moon Knight back when he was a Batman analog.
Okay.
Early days of Moon Knight, he was really just let's put Batman in a white suit, and he wasn't really the mental illness aspect wasn't really played up, and I liked him back
Mm.
then. And I really loved Master of Kung Fu. Who's
Okay.
not technically a superhero, Shang-Chi. Right? They made a movie about
That's
him.
fine.
But the comics were very different than the movie. I really like that character. We can go on
Alright.
about that and why they could never adapt the character the way he was because his origin was just so racist with Fu
Oh.
Manchu because his dad was Fu Manchu. But this whole concept of his dad was like a supervillain trying to take over the world, raised him to be an assassin, to work for him, and one day he goes to like kill one of his dad's enemies, and he's been brainwashed his whole life to serve his father.
Mm,
Sees this old man in a bed, I can't kill this dude, and then spends the
yeah.
rest of his life, basically the rest of the comic, fighting against his father's machinations. That's a great origin story,
Oh, absolutely.
and it's hard to use, but they can't use Fu Manchu for it. But it's a great origin story, so I love that.
Awesome. So the second part of this
Yeah.
is I'm gonna make you choose between your babies,
Oh God.
because that's fun. That's fun, especially now you've got 2 series here, or 2 at least different sets of characters.
Difficult.
So from all of the characters that you've written, whether it's a side cast member or it's a main character, which is your favorite, or at least favorite to write?
I don't even know. That's really hard. Like, they're all different.
Mm,
I mean, right now I'm really enjoying my dwarf. It was in a series that almost no one has seen because that's not out yet. Um,
mm.
I really like Jew.
Okay.
I like writing a snarky teenager. That was kind of fun. And I don't know, I have different kind of fun with them. I never know how to answer these questions. I have a different kind of fun with all of them.
Well, that's fair. That's a fair answer.
Probably, I've written the most Rohan by far.
Mm,
I mean, it's 4 whole 500,000 words through his point of view.
yeah.
Like that's a lot,
That's a
and
lot invested in 'em.
it's one point of view. It's almost like Harry Dresden in that it's not first person, but it is all his point of view. There's not a page from anyone else in that series. So yeah, I don't know. That's I can't answer. I can't choose. They're
All
different.
right.
They're different. They're different.
I won't make you choose. That's
Yeah.
a valid answer. They're all different. They all have their traits.
Yeah.
So, and we were talking about this before, you also have a YouTube channel. How has that
Mhm.
been going for you? How are you finding the YouTube life?
Uh, it hasn't gotten a lot of traction, which is fine. Like I really
Mm.
put it up there just so I could. I used to blog about like book topics, like genre definitions, or like I made a video about like Sarah J. Maas came out with a book, and she um, uh, different versions had a different like bonus chapter.
I
It
had
was
seen
very
that, yeah.
very contentious, and it annoyed me that she did that. I thought it was not nice to her fans, and I make instead of writing a blog post about Sarah J. Maas doesn't care what I think, right? That's fine. She shouldn't. Right? I
Yeah.
would if I were her, but I want an event. So
Mm.
so my YouTube channel is me like yelling at the clouds. It's was it old man yelling at clouds? Is that what they say? Like
Yeah.
get off my lawn, you.
I get it. Yep.
But there are topics that really irritate me. Like I feel people talk about genre, and I feel most people
Mm.
talk about genre poorly, and they don't. What is science fantasy anyway? And
Mm.
I'm like, you can actually answer this. Like, there's good definitions that you can have that
Mm.
you can work with, and then you can clearly say this is science fiction, this is fantasy, these are the attributes they have. It's not that hard. Let me tell you. Listen to me, and we'll all be happier. So we can have the conversation that we want to have. But you got to start by agreeing on what the terms mean. Otherwise, you can't talk about anything.
Mm.
And so like, oh, no one's going to listen to me. So I'll make a YouTube video and I'll feel like I've accomplished something, even if I haven't. But it's not really going anywhere, but that's okay. Like,
Well,
I don't really care.
that's the whole, part about YouTube is you're putting videos out there. It's into the void for however long until it, eventually picks up traction. So it's just one of those things that you have to grind at, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I'm ever popular. I hope some people who, pick my book up in 5 years go, what does this guy think about this stuff? And they can find the YouTube videos. Like, oh, okay.
exactly.
That's what he thinks about these things. So, it's a resource
Exactly.
for readers. The cool thing I did with YouTube that I was really proud of, I thought this was a really good idea, is I made videos for every Hybrid Helix book that give you like a not short, but pretty short, but everything you should have learned from that book. So that if
Mm,
you're reading like book 5 and you're like, what happened in book 4? You can watch the
nice.
video and you can get like all the take homes. It's not a recap chapter by chapter, but it's like at the end of
Just
this
an
book, now
overall.
we know this character came from this place and this character has these powers and we know these things. And kind of instead of putting the 2 pages in the front of the book that say
Mhm.
what happened before, because I find that it's so hard. So I'm like, there's so much happened. I can't fit it in 2 pages,
Yeah.
but I can put it in a 20-minute video. So I thought that was a neat thing to put in on my YouTube channel that I don't know if other people are doing that, but they should.
That's smart. I do love the story so far that is normally at the front, like you mentioned, in a whether it's like 5 pages or 10 pages in some cases, but it's always a huge help because I find as a reader, how much time do you have to go back and reread the books before,
Right.
or do you just have time to read that one new book that came out that's shiny and you just want to get to, but your memory isn't, quite there.
But if I make a 20-page insert in the front, then someone's paying for that paper.
Hmm.
As an ebook, I would mind less having like a big
Okay.
chunk of text.
Yeah,
That's free, right? Like, but
that's
with,
fair.
with, with a paperback, either you're paying more for the book or I'm
Mm.
getting less money for the book if I put 20 pages in the front. So I'll make a
Right.
YouTube video and it's free for everybody.
No, that's a great resource. So, with that being said, out of
Right?
all the videos you've done so far, if you had a new viewer stop by your channel, which video would you recommend they check out? Whether it's the one you're most proud of or the one that you think would be most helpful to the general audience that you're.
Start with the first one, science fiction versus
Okay.
fantasy. That gives you the best idea of what. So I'm a philosopher by training. So my whole thing
Mhm.
is I have what I feel is a very good definition of what science fiction is and what fantasy is and what's the actual difference between them that covers all the examples. Listen to that, and if you're interested in what I have to say about that, then you'll want to watch more videos. And if you just think, oh my god, this guy's just blowing hot air and I want to shoot myself after 20 minutes of this, then don't watch anymore because they're all going to be the same. They're all going to be that me talking about other stuff. That or there's a particular thing. There's a so Rohan, the main character of the Hybrid Helix, is half alien, but he's is half South Asian descent, very specifically in the book.
Mhm.
So as I'm not, I'm definitely not. So I always thought that I would get more grief from people about telling another like a story about another
Mm.
culture. It actually has never happened. No one's really said you shouldn't be telling a story about a South Asian dude. That has never happened to me, or no one said it in any forum where I can have heard it. But defensively and proactively, I made a video about that. So if anyone is interested in my thoughts on that specific topic, watch that video, which I think is called "Why Is Rohan Brown?"
Oh, okay.
I'm
Interesting.
not sure, but I think it's something like that. It's
Something
almost
like
that.
that.
So if anyone is thinking like, why is this white dude talking about South Asians? I will defend myself preemptively in that video. And that video actually got one or two people to read my books. So
Oh,
I'm like,
there you
oh,
go.
that makes sense, and I'll read. Yeah, Usman from Bards and Books. I think he saw that video and said, "Oh, that's interesting. I'll read these now," and he did. So I was like, "Okay."
Oh,
It
awesome.
wasn't really my intent. Like I said, I was really trying to defend myself against an attack that never came, which I think
Right.
is kind of funny. But people do get upset about white people telling stories about a minority person or
Mm.
from that perspective for
Yeah.
often valid reasons. It's often not, and I thought I could get away with it, and I explained why I thought it was okay for me to do it in this specific kind of story.
Well, and I think that's a valid point as well because when it comes to like doing these interviews, for example, there are I find when I read a book or if I'm thinking of reading a book, I have a lot of questions for the author, right? How did you come about this? Why should I read this from your perspective and whatever else, that comes up depending on the book. So
Right.
for me, these interviews and those kind of topics, you going through those on your own channel is entirely helpful because you never know what kind of reader you're going to end up getting from it. Or it might help someone to better understand the material if they didn't quite hit and all kinds of scenarios.
Yeah, I didn't have these resources when I was growing up, right? Like, if I want to ask like Jim Starlin, why'd you make Warlock Time Traveler or whatever, and oh, thank you, Anita, I appreciate that.
Mm.
I felt good about it. But like I wasn't going to be able to ask Jim Starlin a question, or I didn't really have access to
Mm.
like people who were interviewing him, or I mean, excuse me, any of these, or if you
Yeah,
want
of
to like
course.
other examples. So we live in a different age, and as a writer, we need to. It, it's good if we can take advantage of it. I mean, some
Mhm.
people don't feel comfortable doing that. That's fine. Like you do you.
Of
But I mean,
course.
I'm perfectly happy to put my phone up there on my now dead ring light. This poor guy, and I think the ring light, and and I'll ramble on for 20 minutes about whatever ridiculous topic I ramble on about. Usually I have at least one shower's worth of thought goes into every video.
Mm.
That's my unit of measurement for thinking. A
Okay.
shower's worth, right? So one at least one shower goes into every video.
There
So
you
I need
go.
to get the video I need to do next. So I've been promising for people for months is the why do people read Grimdark, and that's the one I need
Mm.
to make because that's a super interesting topic.
It is, yeah, I'm gonna have to go watch that one because I'm also curious. I, as a reader who loves cozy fantasy and all kinds of, like, slice of life fantasy, I also love grimdark, and I just I don't know what it is. I love it.
It's harder to. It's not wrong, but it's harder to
Mm,
explain. I mean, in a way, it's easiest to explain why we like romance. You know,
mm,
relatable characters, happy ending. You feel good when people you relate to have good things
yeah,
happen to them. It's very easy to explain. To explain
mhm,
why we like a grimdark book is more complex.
yes.
I mean, it's worse at all. I'm not saying that. It's just
No, no, not at all.
another level of analysis or another level of sort of a construct to figure it out. I think I
Mm,
can. I think I can account for a chunk of it. So I got to
okay,
make a video. But and I don't write grimdark, and I feel like the grimdark is
okay.
very popular, and the grim stories are very popular. People like the dark stories,
Mm,
and my stories rarely get very dark.
mhm,
Like I don't, if you notice in my books, the heroes are rarely in like such peril that you're like they're never going to escape. Like
yeah,
they get in bad spots, right? But they're usually
yeah.
not that bad. I moderate it because I don't like it when the heroes are in such a bad spot that it seems the whole world is against them. Like I hate that.
There's
So I
no
don't,
hope.
yeah, yeah. So you never feel that when you shouldn't. I don't think, or you rarely, or if ever, feel it when you're reading my stuff.
Mm,
So
yeah, I can attest to that.
yeah,
Timothy here says, "Can't stay long, but hello and congrats."
appreciate that.
And I'm just going to open up for anyone who would like to ask questions to Joe. Feel free to put those in the chat. And while you're doing that, we're going to keep going and I'll check back in with those. So let's go ahead and dive a little bit more into your writing because you've mentioned before that you've used some resources from Brandon Sanderson. So I'd love to know, looking back on his courses that you had watched, what is the one thing that has stuck with you from his course?
I love a ton of the stuff he said, and I don't remember all of it, but I remember generally thinking this was all good or great.
Mm,
The one thing that I think stuck with me the most prominently was he has this concept of promises and payoffs. That when you write
okay.
a book, you early on you've got to tell the reader what they're in for, what kind of story they're going to have, and then you've got to give it to them. And then because writers can get very clever. We're like, oh, I'm going to make this story sound like an action story, but it's going to really be a mystery. And halfway through, you're going to realize, oh, switcheroo, it's actually a different genre than you thought. And it feels very clever and satisfying. And if you get a reader who happens to love both those genres, it might be okay. But
Mm,
more often than not, readers are just going to get pissed off. Readers do not like to have their genre
fair.
switched on them. And my favorite examples of this are science fiction and fantasy. Readers are fine with the science fiction. They're fine with fantasy. They're fine with mixing them. Readers do not like when you switch from one to the other. So if you
Mm,
look at the Star Wars universe, what's the one thing that like ticked off many things ticked off
mm.
the fan? The midichlorians. Started
Okay.
making midichlorians. Oh, he uses the force. His midichlorian levels are high. They tried to turn the use of the force and make it scientific instead of
Mm,
magic, the magical force, right?
right.
As soon as they did that, everybody hated it. Universally, everybody hated the notion of midichlorians.
Interesting.
People are happy to accept there's this magical thing called the force that you can use, magical energy, blah, blah, blah. We're fine. There's also spaceships, fine.
Mm,
No one had a problem with that. You watch the movie, you're great. Then you're
yeah.
like, oh, but this magical thing, it's actually scientific. It's an organelle in the body. No. Now you're saying it's actually
Mm,
science fiction. It's not a science fantasy. No, no one liked that. No one liked when Anne McCaffrey said, "Oh, the dragons are actually like just biological creatures." No one liked
right.
that. Like, no, give me my dragons. They can teleport. It's magical. Fantastic. No one wanted to hear a scientific explanation for how they were bred and they have this special thing that lets them fold space. No, stop it, Anne.
Mm.
Anne's passed away. I shouldn't say that, but you know what I mean. No one liked that switch.
No,
You
that
don't
that's fair.
And you were talking to me about an example of a book you didn't like, where the
Mm.
prologue was from one point of view of a
Yeah.
character of a certain age, a certain level of maturity, and the rest of the book was from the point of view of other characters who were much younger. So you're almost
Mm.
switching from a mature to almost a YA or middle grade type
Mhm.
temperament. You don't want no. Tell the reader what you're going to give them and give it to
Mhm.
them. And if you read Wistful Ascending, like that prologue, a lot of people don't like my prologue. My prologue, if you haven't read the book, it's it's like a slice from like 3/4 of the way into the book. It's like
Mhm.
Rohan's in a big fight with three guys. You don't know what's going on, but I did it so that I'm making you a promise. This is an action
Mhm.
story about people with superpowers. He's like flying through space without a spacesuit or a ship, and they're like manipulating gravity with their minds, right? Like they're superheroes,
Mhm.
right? People with superpowers. I'm telling you, in the first 2 pages, this is what you're in for, and this is what I'm going to give you. And if you don't like it, that's totally okay, right?
Yeah.
My mom hasn't read my books. My wife hasn't read my books, right? They don't want to read these things. That's fine. We can be friends.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you right up front. This is the story you're getting. Partial Function. I think I even did a better job. You read the first chapter, Partial. I
Yeah.
read one review of Partial Function. Like that first chapter tells you what you're in for, and I'm like, that's what
Mhm.
I. The first chapter, you get the setup, you get the main character. You get Kina, you get her dog. You know who they are. You know that the style of the fight scenes are going to be. You know you've got magical martial arts, and then
Mhm.
it doesn't tell you the whole plot, but you know that's the story you're going to get. And then I think I give it to you, right? You get
Yep.
that's the stuff you get in the rest of the book. So that promises and payoffs. And again, he's exact. It's not like it's super original or brilliant of Brandon to say that. I don't know if he's the first person to use these exact words for it, but people like to get clever and like, oh, I'm going to
Mhm.
do a little switcheroo in the middle. Don't.
Yeah.
Very
So
hard to pull.
I'm curious then, would you categorize that in the same thing as when either books or even TV shows or movies do this, where they give you an entire situation, they get you so invested in it, and then bam, it was a dream, and that whole scenario is swiped out from under you. Would you put that under the same category or something different?
No, yeah, same thing, right? You're
Yeah.
promising them that this thing is important and impactful and has emotional,
Mhm.
and then you're not paying it off because you're taking it all away. So
Yeah.
you buy into this. So this is meaningful. This is the
Mhm.
promise, and it's going to be resolved. And a resolution is never. It was just a dream. That is not
Yeah.
an adequate resolution. Now, look, books can break any rule and still be
Absolutely.
okay, right? So I'm not saying
Yeah.
this can never work. I'm not saying Wizard of Oz is terrible, right?
Yeah.
Or was it Wizard of Oz where it was all a dream or whatever?
Yeah, yeah, she wakes up and
Yeah, okay,
yeah.
well, that's fine, right? It's Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Like things can have, but I would say it's a flaw for anything. I mean, something
Mhm.
can overcome its flaws, can transcend its flaws, sure, but yeah,
Yeah.
you don't want to do that.
I'm more thinking things like where halfway through the actual story, you get that dream sequence, and then you give, like, a separate ending, right?
Dreams are so dangerous for just that reason.
Yeah.
You can have a character like you can make it clear that they're dreaming, and the dream can be indication of what
Mm.
like that they're upset about something.
Yeah.
He was so sad that he dreamt, he dreamt about the bloody massacre that very night. Like that's fine
Yeah.
because you get what that's telling you.
Yeah.
That's clear. But if you tell it as if it's not a dream, and then the guy wakes up from it, no, you got to use that
Right.
very sparingly if you're going to use it. In my opinion. Well, no
Okay.
one has to listen to me, but
Well,
that's my
no, and
opinion. So I'll give you my opinion.
well, and that's the creativity of writing, right? Everyone has a different way of expressing their stories and the, styles that they choose to tell that story in. So I think it's important to hear all aspects of it,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Um, so aside from Brandon Sanderson's coursework, did you use any other resources to learn about the writing process, anything like that?
I mean, a lot of it was, yeah. I mean, I listen to a lot of like podcasts,
Okay.
writing excuses, which is Brandon, but it's other people as well. I learned a lot from
Yeah.
Howard Taylor and Dan Wells and Mary Robinette Cole on that podcast. I learned a lot from Merle Lafferty. She has a podcast about writing. She talks less about the craft and more about the sort of emotional roller coaster of being a writer,
Hmm.
but she does talk about craft.
I mean,
And
that's important.
yeah, yeah. And then I learned a lot from beta readers because
Interesting.
if you take a beta reader's feedback, you can often recognize that when they're criticizing something in one chapter, it's something you do all the time. So John
Mm.
Paolante, who's a wonderful author and a friend of mine. I've never met him in person, but I know him from Discord. He
Mhm.
beta read, I think it was Blood Reunion, and he was like, Joe, he's like, too many cold opens. And when he said that, I suddenly realized I had this habit of doing cold opens in a chapter. The chapter
Mm.
I was telling Kate, you and I were talking, I think, offline. But the
Yeah.
cold open is just when a chapter starts and they're just talking, and you don't know where they are or how far,
Mhm.
time wise, has it been a day, a week, a month since the
Yeah.
previous chapter ended? You just plumped in the middle of a conversation, and then you have to
Mhm.
think, and then clues are laid in. You finally, 3 pages later, you're like, okay, this is a month later or whatever. And I realized as soon as he said that, like, okay, this is something I do all the time, and it causes all kinds of problems. And this is why
Yeah.
some reviewers didn't like the pacing and called the story episodic when it really wasn't.
Mm.
It's because I had all these cold opens. And I was like, oh. So John taught me a huge lesson in one sentence as a beta reader for a book that made me understand something about my entire writing process that I had never like conceptualized, like consciously.
Mhm.
So I get a lot from that, and I get a lot from reading reviews. I know people,
No.
oh, reviews aren't for the author. Well, I'm sorry. If you're putting it up in public, I get to read it.
I think that's tricky. That to me, that's like my perspective on it is it depends on the intent of the person reading the review. That's where my perspective falls on it. I think a review can be for yes, as a reader, I write them so other readers can find a book that fits them. But if the author can find something helpful in it as well, by all means, I don't see any problem with reading it. But I wouldn't necessarily. I just write it as I experienced the book.
but that's
Whoever reads
fine.
it,
But
that's
that's
your
how.
intent and you
But
how
I
you go
never
in.
really know how other people experience the book unless I read
Mm.
the review. And that's my
Yeah.
only way. I only know how I experience the book, but I never know how much of that is because I'm weird, right?
Right.
But then I'll read your. So let's say someone will read, right? So like, I read reviews, and that thing with John only probably clicked in my head because like
Mm.
Matt on Books had gone on like and done a review online and said, oh, this story was super episodic, almost like a comic book where each. And I'm like, I
Mhm.
really shouldn't have felt that way to the reader when I wrote. Like, I didn't mean for it to feel that way. And then John said his thing about, cold opens, and I was like, I put these things together, and that's coalesced. And I was like, okay,
Mm.
this is what I'm doing. This is not what I want to be doing. I stopped doing it. So I think later books have worked better, but
Mm.
you shouldn't write your review in order to help the author, right? That should not
No.
be what you're doing, right? That's.
No,
But
I'm
when you write, I like this and I didn't like that, and as an
yeah.
author, I read that, then okay, then I know, like I know I have to
Mm.
put the Ursins in every Hybrid Helix book. I was going to
Yeah.
kill them off in book 3, but now I can't. I'm
No,
kidding.
you cannot. Absolutely not.
I was never going to kill them off, but I don't think I meant for them to be as big a part of the story as they become because people keep loving them. I'm like, all right, what am I going to
They're
do?
they're adorable.
I don't know. People love the Ursins. They love dog. I write furries better than I write regular people. I don't know.
Uh,
It's good. I'm
yeah.
glad people like them. I wish I knew how. I wish I could do it like on purpose.
Well, I mean, if it helps any, they're absolutely endearing as
Yes. Thank you.
characters. There you go. Thank
Yes,
you,
well,
Bo.
yeah.
Absolutely. We will riot.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like them as characters. I like Aang and Ursula,
Mm.
but again, I never meant for them to really reappear after like chapter 3 of book
Well,
1,
well, I
and
hope
then
you like
somehow
writing them.
somehow they keep popping up. So,
No, that's good. That's good. I think it's a statement to when an author gets to a point where their readers, their fan base loves characters so much that they have like become a staple. And that's a form of success on its own.
oh, it's great. It's no, I complain, but it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. Much better than the converse, right? We don't really care who
Mm,
dies. You don't want
yeah.
that, right?
No, we don't. No, not at all.
You don't care. Like, oh, come on.
I am invested in these space bears. I need to know and see them come up in every book. So, but moving along then
Moving
to the
along.
writing process. So do you outline? Do you discovery write? Do you sit down and tune out the world? What is that entire process like for
I think
you?
I think for everyone it's a continuum, and people
Mm.
people make a bigger deal out of this than they probably should. I'm much closer to the outlining side of things. I need to know
Okay.
where the story's going, but I'll always have big holes in the middle where I'm like, okay, And then Rowan has to figure out a clever way to beat this guy, and then the next thing happens. And that's my outline.
Okay.
When I get to that chapter, I have to come up with a clever thing, which is
Mm.
often really, I mean, it falls into place usually, but it's. I don't plan out every detail before I write the first chapter, but I plan out a lot of it, and the
Okay.
structure is really set, like the timeline. So
Mm.
once I write a rough draft, I almost never rearrange things. Like I'll never move.
Okay.
Like I'll never move a scene like to an earlier part of the book. I will never. I haven't done that in like. I don't know that I've ever done that. It's very linear. So, and I have to write it
Mm.
in direct order because I feel like the feelings and like the like even the way things are described has to change in a certain way to follow the character arc in the book. So if I write
Mm.
like the middle, a scene from the middle, and then I go back to the beginning, I don't have that progression, that feeling. So I really have to write chapter one, then write chapter two, and then write, I can't skip around. So people do that and they pull it off. I don't know how, but I have to
Oh,
be exact. I have to have an outline. I've got to follow it. I got to write it. And then once I write it, I don't change more than a couple sentences here and there. And some
okay.
people say like, oh, in this scene, I didn't get what's going on here. And I'm like, I have to add one sentence about how someone felt. And that'll usually fix it or clear it up. But I won't like
Right.
add like a whole nother scene. Like I never do
Right.
that.
You have
So
a solid grasp of what you need to happen, and then
yeah,
anything that changes is pretty small.
yeah. Yeah, the most
Um,
I've ever done is I deleted a plot, a subplot from Wistful Ascending. When my first editor told me there were too much bears, and she was
oh,
right. I took
really?
out a whole subplot with the bears. I'm gonna make a novella out of it one day, or a short story or something.
I
But
mean,
the
yes,
bears,
please.
yeah, all the Ursons try to get Ron to marry one of them.
Oh
Um,
my gosh, that would
and
be
the
hilarious.
whole scene where he's like, no, 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 I can't, because he's. I mean, part of the whole like setup is he can't have kids, right? He's sterile. It's like part of all the
Mm,
hybrids are. That's literally like part of the magic system. Like it's not. That's a.
yeah.
He's trying to explain like, no, there won't be any cute cubs, and they're like, oh, you're shy. You're just shy.
Yeah.
Don't worry, it'll be fine. We know you're small, but she'll take good care of you. And he's
Yeah.
like, I don't understand. I really can't. And then that's the whole storyline. But it was
Right.
really funny. But it was like 10,000 words that didn't need to be there in the middle of the book, and it just
Yeah.
dragged on and detracted from everything. And my editor said to chop it. I was like, fine. I chopped it. I
I
did.
mean, hey, you can make a little short story out of it, and
I should
then,
one day. I should one
you
day
know,
release it for on Patreon or on my newsletter or
there you go.
Patreon. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of
Something
course.
like that.
So just in follow up to this then, because I often find that you balance the action and the character work really well throughout the story. Do you have a formula for that? Does it happen naturally?
I think I just get tired of writing one thing.
Oh,
And then
okay.
an action scene, I've got to do something else, right? You gotta.
Right.
I can't just have action after action because like, and part of me is like the action is the plot is what I start with, and then all the other stuff is just to keep you caring about the action, right?
Right.
I don't know if that's actually what's happening, but I just alternate, and then as I've gone later in my writing career, I really try to make an effort to have something happen in every chapter. Uh,
Okay.
and I did that in partial function. I think I pulled that off better in partial function than in most things, but a lot of it is just yeah. I don't know. I think it is natural. I don't really, you know, just there's a fight and then you've got to have a pause. I can't do breakneck action because it's just tiring.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone can ever top Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z for their what 70 episode fight scenes.
Yeah, but they're boring. Like I love Dragon Ball Z, but like
Yeah.
if you sat there and watched like all those episodes straight, I mean, if you come back every
Oh,
day, right? You've had a day, went to school, you come back, the episode's on in the afternoon, you watch one episode, then you go to
yeah.
bed. Like it's a little different. But if you just watch
Yeah.
them straight, like they're exhausting. And the manga is not nearly as bad. The TV show would stretch it out to fill in episodes, but if you read the manga,
Oh,
it's much more succinct. You don't
okay.
feel volume after volume on like one exchange. Things change much more. So yeah. So I think I just alternate, and then you have to have the down scenes so you keep caring about just in
Mhm.
fight after fight like and you don't care about the people anymore. Then you don't want to read the. It's very there's an audience for that, but it's small,
Right.
smaller,
Okay. Yeah,
just
that's
pure action. Mhm.
yeah.
I would get bored. No, that's the other part of it. I get bored. Primarily, I'm writing to entertain myself.
Let's see. Bo here said, or Ganesh, sorry. I fully believe I finished my schooling before Goku defeated Frieza. Yeah. So along those lines, because you also include a bunch of banter in your stories, and I just love to know because it's hard. I would imagine it's hard to pull off banter and wit and humor in a way that is going to come across well with readers, but to also strike that balance with the more serious tones, because again, you balance all of that really well. So I don't even know what the question is. How do you do that?
Um, yeah, editing.
Okay.
Editing. My first draft probably always has more banter than it needs, and the banter always has to serve a point. So the banter will represent a shift in the conversations. They'll tease each
Mhm.
other about something. They're actually conveying information. It's rarely just jokes for their own sake. Sometimes there are, but usually not. Usually they're yeah. I'm the king of dad jokes. Uh,
Yes.
I had a good one in what I was just writing. I put it on Twitter. Um, so and then a lot of it is hammering and reading it over and over again and being willing to like kill a joke if it's just one too many. 'Cause
Right.
I definitely had to do that. With the I'll have two people having an exchange, and Whaley will just make fun of Rohan one too many times, and you realize you've gone too far for the emotional
Mhm.
impact. At some point, the teasing would get hurtful, right? So like,
Right.
you got to read it over
Yeah.
and over again and be like, okay, that was one line too many. Got to cut that.
Mhm.
That's the whole kill your darlings thing. They always say that the writers kill your darlings, and they don't mean necessarily your characters, but you can have a great line, like a punchline, and like it may
Mhm.
just not work. The emotional resonance isn't right for the scene, and you take
Right.
a joke out, which I hate. I hate doing that, but you have to. You have to. That was killing my darlings is why I got rid of the Ursins trying to marry off Rohan. I
Right.
love that. I love that whole exchange. So I think that whole thing where I don't want to do this, and they're like, "Oh, we know you're nervous, but it's okay. We'll take care
Mhm.
of you." I love that dynamic. I think that's hilarious.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
pet the guy on the head. He's like, "No, no, no, I really don't want this." I'm like, we know you're just shy. Like, no, 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 I'm not just shy. I love that. But it was like,
Yeah.
I didn't get to use it because it didn't really work.
So it it sounds like you write more and then take away what doesn't necessarily fit.
Yeah, less as I write, less as I've gone on in my career.
Okay.
Right.
Interesting.
So now I'm so here's what happens to me. I'll write one too many jokes and then I get writer's block. And then I realize I've written
Mhm.
myself into a corner and I have to go and delete the last two paragraphs and move on. Or
Oh,
whatever.
neat.
I
Okay.
get stuck right there. And that's how my brain works. I don't know if that's good or bad.
Hmm.
I
Well, I
will,
mean, you're figuring your writing out, like your writing style out and your habits, so that I would say that's progress. That's a good thing.
but when I get stuck, it's usually because the last thing and the tone wasn't quite right. And then I get
Mm.
stuck because I can't like move forward from there. And then I realize I've got to go edit what I just did and
Oh,
cut stuff
interesting.
out. And then I can start going again. So it's
Okay.
very much like one thread, single threaded. I'm a coder, so like I'm
Mm.
writing, I'm going along, and then I don't just
Yeah.
get stuck, and I'm like, okay, I'll write the next chapter. I can't do that. I've got to
Right.
fix what got me stuck, and then move on. Um,
That makes sense.
that's just how I work. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I with the very limited coding experience I have, that entire explanation makes more sense than than I think it would have if I didn't have that
Yeah.
coding
Yeah.
experience. But
Yeah.
yeah, the painful bugs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I'm just going to open up to the chat again. If you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we'll cover them as we continue to go. But let's dive in to partial function and the questions, because like I said, when I'm reading a book or about to read a book, I have questions. So you talked about your sales pitch earlier, which was you have taken meets retired monster hunter in Jurassic Park. Firstly, where did the inspiration for that combination, that specific combination, come from?
So I'm a dad. I've got between 2 and 4 kids, depending on how you count them, and I realized at one point when my children were small, what a lot of parents realize, which is I would probably do really horrible things to protect or ensure the safety of my
Mm,
own kids. And I realized this when I was watching someone do something really horrific on TV. They were like a politician, like totally just lying. And I was like, okay, they're doing something, fundamentally evil here. They can't possibly believe what they're saying is true. But then I'm like, but they're probably like guaranteeing a certain like level of generational wealth for their kids. Hey, it's Matt.
Mm.
Hi, Matt.
Hey, Matt.
Um, and I was like, you know what? If I had a chance to like sell out my principles for like generational wealth, where you can protect if your kid has a disability, they'll be fine because you've got
Hmm.
a certain amount of money in the bank in America, right? That makes a difference.
Yeah.
You can like, I'm like, I don't know if I would pass that up. I'm not saying, and luckily, never happened. No one's offered me millions of dollars to betray my principles,
But
right?
it's an ethical and moral dilemma.
But I could get why someone would. I looked at my
Hmm.
kids; they were little, and I'm like, if I could tell my daughter, you're protected for life. You never have to. If you can't find a job, you'll be fine. Whatever, you'll have health care. Whatever, I would do some pretty questionable stuff. And so I like that concept. So then that's where I got this idea. A woman with a certain set of skills, kids are kidnapped, and so you get this chance for someone to do some like very John Wick type stuff, but you
Hmm.
sympathize because she's trying to get her kidnapped children back.
Absolutely.
So I
Yeah.
wasn't really thinking of Taken first. I thought of the parent getting the kids back first. I'm like, well, that's Taken. That's why
Hmm.
Taken was so appealing, right? It's
Yeah.
this we love this story that we all relate. Relate's not the right word. Empathize with, I don't know,
Empathize.
something like that.
Yeah.
So I got to take an idea from that, and then I wanted to make it a cultivate. I really wanted to make it more cradle-like, more of a progression fantasy. So then, progression
Okay.
fantasy, you need like this notion of why are people like leveling up? Why are they increasing their power levels? Well, if there's a stream of monsters, you have this geographical thing where to go north, you got these monsters just like walking across, and then you have to
Mm.
fight them, and then you need their bodies literally for the materials you use for your daily life. Then all of a sudden, you've got dinosaurs. And then,
Right.
and then I'm like,
Okay.
well, I already have a world. And I realized like I have a setting that's kind of like this because
Mm.
the world I had created. I mean, the world I had designed before Wistful Ascending came out. Right, the world is
Right.
mentioned in Wistful Ascending. It's not described, but I had it. It was in my head.
Yeah.
I knew what the world was before Wistful Ascending. So
Mm.
um, so then I got the I was like, instead of just creating a brand new thing, why don't I just I'm lazy. I don't want to do a
Mm.
whole new set of world building and create a whole new magic system. I already have one. And my
Right.
magic system isn't really conducive to true cultivation like cradle like story. People don't level up that dramatically. You train
Right.
better, but you don't, not the way it happens in cradle. That's just not how my
Mm.
system works. So it really lost the cultivation, the progression elements. It's still cultivation, but it's not progression. It lost that.
Right.
But I was like, all right, I was having too much fun at that point to to with Liam Neeson play a main character from the book. Liam Neeson could play um no, I can't think of anyone, any old men. The problem is Liam Neeson's older now. A young Liam Neeson could definitely play what's his name? The Arha? No, I forgot the name of my own character. The guy
Oh,
who
the
the guy who runs the clan that they go to for help.
yeah, the Tekun or Tekai, it's Zara. I'm pretty sure it's Zara.
Yeah, that young Liam Neeson can play that guy, but that guy's supposed to be
Mm.
young. And then you haven't seen the Emperor in this book, so I can't tell you.
No.
So he may be in book two. So we'll see.
And we have a follow-up question along the same lines here. If partial function was adopted, I assume you would want Michelle Yeoh to play Akina, but who is your dream casting for Remy?
If we could get Michelle Yeoh from like 25 years ago, it'd be perfect. But I don't
Mm.
know that she can pull off the physicality you need to play Akina anymore. I'm very partial to when I watch a martial arts movie. Some actors can pull off the physicality aspect, they can move right, and you
Right.
can't. And the ones who can, you have a certain amount of athleticism. And as
Mm.
athletic as she is, I don't know if she can pull it off anymore at her age. I mean, that would be the ideal cast, and it literally is who I had in my head when I wrote the character. Acting wise, Michelle Yeoh is more than perfect.
Mm.
But if we get a younger Michelle Yeoh, that'd be even better. But I mean, obviously, you can't. Who's my ideal cast for Zhu? I never really thought about Zhu. I don't know. For Zhu, you need like an actress who can pull off 16-year-old, you know,
Sass.
sass. And I'm sure there's plenty
Yeah.
of them, but I don't know who they are because I don't watch a lot of stuff that has 16-year-old actresses in it because I just don't. For Remy, um, that's an excellent question. Um,
Hmm.
you need a big dude. That's what you need. A big dude who's there was a show
Hmm.
there was a show about like a post-apocalyptic world. It's like a martial arts show. It's a post-apocalyptic setting, and like people were living on like these southern style plantations, and this one guy had like a motorcycle and a sword, and there was like mysticism in it, and it was on like it was on like a AMC,
Ooh.
and I can't remember the name of the show, but there was a
Hmm.
character on there called I think Baiji, and the actor who played him was pretty good. But you just need a big dude. You know, he can't be
Yeah.
thin, and he's got to have a big beard. And I can't think of anyone off the top of my head.
There we go. We got Matt in here.
Yeah, we got
We got
yes,
Matt to play Remy. He's
yeah,
six
Matt. You got,
five.
I don't know, Matt. I've seen your head, and I don't know that your hair's suit enough. I don't know there's enough hair going on. Um,
Into the
Wait,
Badlands.
too. Into the Badlands. That's the show. Thank you. There's a character Baiji on Into the Badlands who's probably too short to be Remy, but the right kind of. You need a bear-like guy. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Into the Badlands. That was definitely the show. So you need a big bear-like guy. You know, ideally you'd have like one of the pro strongmen if they could act.
Right.
Physically, I'm thinking of someone like there was the Mountain who was in Game of Thrones, but there's another professional strongman, Eddie something or other. I can't remember his name. Who was
Okay.
a little more portly. That would probably be even better. But Remy's named after a guy I actually know in real life who's
Oh, really?
On a Discord server with me, Jeremy Flagg, who's a writer. He writes superhero romance, and the whole
Oh.
the whole joke is that you get this big hairy dude who uses bear style kung fu, and he's gay, so he's a bear in this like triple way.
Yeah.
So it's like this terrible pun, and which is why I had to write the character.
I
And
mean, that's fitting for your writing style right
yeah,
there.
yes, I kept waiting for people to groan, like because Brew Way, the bat dude, like come on,
Yeah.
come on. But yeah, I like that show also quite. Eddie Hall, oh my God, One Little Geek is like my memory. Eddie Hall's the guy I was thinking of. Yeah, Eddie Hall would probably physically pull off Remy a little better. He's a little more portly.
Okay.
He's got a beard. He's a funny guy. I follow him on Instagram. I don't know.
Oh, okay. I'll be honest, I'm terrible with names, especially when it comes to actors and actresses. So,
I am too. I am too.
yeah. Okay. I'm glad I'm not alone there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Um,
forget my own names. I remember when one of my narrator came back with Whistle Sending. He's like, "How do you pronounce this name?" I'm like, "How am I supposed to know? Is that in my book?" And yeah, sure enough, that was in my book. Like, all right,
yeah.
I forgot.
It's those lovely little reminders.
Yeah, yeah.
So with having two main characters you've written, you have Rohan and you have Akina. How was it writing the two of them?
So if you read them, the sense of humor is not the same, but it's very similar.
Mhm.
I mean, they're both roughly my sense of humor, right? Because like they're both kind of sarcastic. But Akina is really different because she does not have Rohan's uncertainty and
Mm.
doubt. She is, and I very much wanted to write a different kind of character. I wanted to write a character who she's going to get her girls back and she's going to do whatever it takes, and she's not conflicted about it. She's not going to sit
Yeah.
around going, "Should I really be doing this?" That's
No.
not Akina. She's like, "No, no, no, I'm doing this, and if you
Mhm.
don't like it, you can get out of my way, or I can go through you, and those
Yeah.
are the only options." And this John Wick, right? It's this John Wick.
Mhm.
Like John Wick never goes, "Should I really be killing all these dudes to get revenge for my dog?" He doesn't have the pause.
Be a
Is the
whole
right
other
thing to do?
story.
Is this the right thing to do? No, he just rolls through people, and I wanted
Mhm.
that John Wickness.
Yeah.
I don't know if Taken has that. I don't remember Taken, honestly. I've seen it, but
It has, yeah, it has that, I would say.
okay. Okay. So Akina's really different. She doesn't have Rohan's self-doubt. She doesn't have his hesitancy. She doesn't not, Rohan doesn't
Mhm.
want to do stuff, but he gets pulled in. No, no, no. She's all in. She's like, "Oh, you took my girls, I'm getting them back." So
Yeah.
it was refreshing and different and fun to play this character who's like got laser focus and she's gonna go after it, and she no zero hesitation. So it was a very different character, but also very similar because she's telling the same kind of jokes, more or less. More or less.
Right.
There's a, again, she doesn't have the self-deprecating humor because she doesn't really have a self-deprecating personality, And I made this point somewhere else. You know, there's a tendency in the plot line like this to have the person going after their kids, to have this subplot where like they were a bad parent, but now they're trying to make up for it by going after and
Mm.
saving their kids. And I'm like, I didn't want that. I hate that.
Right.
I'm like, no, no, no. She thinks she's a pretty good mom, and I'm not arguing with her, right? But she's certainly not like, oh, I was a terrible mom, and now is my chance to make it up to them by saving their lives. That's
Yeah.
not it, right? I did not like. I'm not doing that. I don't. That annoys me. She's like, no, no, no. I was a good mom. I'm getting them back. You
Yeah.
know, so I like subverting the little tropes because you expect that a little bit. A little bit,
Hmm.
you expect her to be like, oh, you expect Remy to have a crush on her, right?
Hmm.
Like oh, a torch from the old days, right? You expect these little twists. You expect the kids to be terrified.
Hmm.
They've been kidnapped by very nasty men. No, they're just worried they've killed too many of their guards, right? Like I
Right.
try to subvert everywhere I can. Like every chapter, I want to have hit you with something that you're like, oh, that's not quite what I thought was going to happen. That was the goal
Yeah.
of the book. That was the way I wrote the whole thing. It's like every chapter, I got to have some kind of punch uh,
Right.
to it. So that was one of them.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Akina was
I
fun.
mean, I'd say you did that.
Thank you. Yeah, but Akina was fun because of that certainty, that moral certainty,
Hmm.
which I don't have in the Hybrid Helix. Uh,
Yeah.
he's much more conflicted. So
Mm.
which is also good to write. I mean that's fun too. But here I got you can get away with it because like someone takes your kids,
Hmm.
go after them. We
Yep.
can all be okay with that. She doesn't come across
Yeah.
as bloody.
I would say it, like as a reader comparing them, Rohan to me reminds me a little bit of the Star Trek notions on the humanitarianism, right? How do we resolve this without minimal, crossfire or deaths, whatever the case? How do we resolve this in a safe as possible way? Whereas Akina had very much, like you said, a single mindedness to her, but she was also, as much as she cared for her counterparts, her friends, family, and so on, she also had a coldness to her in comparison. And I did appreciate how you played with that difference in that line with Akina.
Yeah, that was deliberate. Yeah, she's. I tried to paint her as um, she's coming from a more brutal world.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, sorry. Nicholas says here, is she gonna say Akina is Anakin?
but she's coming from a more brutal like world, a more primitive world. She
Mhm.
doesn't have like modern progressive Canadian values.
Yeah.
She's not from that setting. So I tried to play into that also. But
Right.
also she's not. There's a whole thing: is she the hero or not? And I address
Mhm.
it explicitly in the book. There's a conversation where
Yep.
like someone's like, "I thought you were the hero." It's like, so
Yeah.
you can take from that what it's worth. But you don't need. But I wanted a little bit of a morally gray character. She's a
Mhm.
little morally gray.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But part of me was like, I'm going to throw in some of the stuff that people love in fantasy,
Mm.
and I'm going to because part of the reason I wrote this book was I lost Spiffbo in the first round in Spiffbo 8, and I was like, damn it, I can write a fantasy book that people will enjoy, and I'm going to
Right.
do it. And I literally that's how I came up with the idea, and then 2 weeks later I was writing the book, and
Oh,
I'm going
awesome.
to throw in a morally gray character. Damn it, and it didn't quite come out the Spiffbo winner I wanted it to be, but we'll see how it does. Um,
Okay, yeah, definitely.
thank
At
you.
least it's a story, right? It's an origin story.
Yeah, yeah,
Good
yeah.
to have you here, Nicholas.
Yeah.
And so you've got two different series, or at least two different styles of books, and how you wrote them. What would you say is your target reader audience? Because that is always the trick with publishing.
I mean, the target audience is me. I mean, so here's
Jason, no, we're done. No, I'm kidding.
hopefully it's not only me, but the target audience is me. So okay, I know a lot of people in the writing community. I know a lot of writers, right? Like casually
Mhm.
from like Discord servers. What I know a lot of writers. I've talked to a lot of writers on
Yeah.
all levels. I've had conversations with people much bigger than me and people even smaller than me, right?
Mhm.
In terms of sales and audience. And there's sort of two ways to go. You can there's a continuum, right? You can plot. I know people all the way at one end where they literally study the market, they study their audience, they poll, they look at the bestsellers in their category, they literally write out the tropes in the
Mm.
bestsellers in their category, and they write their books to incorporate those elements, and they target people who buy their books, and they
Right.
make good money doing that. And there's a perfectly valid way to write.
Mhm.
Right? That's fine, right? Uh, I have this sort of reflexive like dislike for it, which is unfair. Like I shouldn't feel that way,
Mhm.
but it annoys me. But it shouldn't. It really shouldn't. It's totally fine. Especially, people need some people are trying to put food on their table, right? Like I don't do this
Yeah.
to pay my bills, but people do. And like if you that's how you pay your bills, great.
Mhm.
You're not hurting anyone. You're not doing anything immoral. But the other side of it is you just write what you love, and then you hope
Mm.
that enough other people will also love it that they will buy it, and maybe you'll break even or make some money. And
Yeah.
I'm very much on that end, not all the way. I do pay attention when people say they love the Bears. I'm like, fine, but I mean, it's not like
Mm.
I put the Bears in the books, and I'm like, I really hate them, or they don't really
Right.
fit, or it's not what I like. That's not it. I'm very
Mhm.
happy to put the Bears in, but I probably think about it a little more than I would because I know people love the Bears, right?
Right.
So I'm very much I'm not all the way in just pleasing myself, but I'm more on that end. So
Yeah.
my target audience is me. I would suspect that more often than not, people who are older will like these books more. Uh,
Okay.
I don't think I'm ever going to hit it big with 14-year-olds, but maybe
Mm.
I will. I don't know. I don't write young characters. I'm not writing YA. I'm not trying to. I'm not writing teens discovering themselves. Like that's not.
Mhm.
Those aren't the. That doesn't interest me anymore. I'm 53. Like I'm
I
sure
mean,
I
that's
was
fair.
interested. I was interested in that once, but like I don't care anymore. I don't know.
Right.
So I think my target audience is uh, uh, I'm always surprised when like a 25-year-old female is like, I love this book. I'm like, I don't know why, but that's great. Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
probably a little older.
I I mean, as a 33-year-old female, I will say that I grew up watching X-Men. I grew up watching all the superhero stuff and reading comic books and all of that. So for me, it's nostalgia as well, reading Wistful Ascending and Akina and going through your stories. There's so many things that are familiar and fun and the things that I loved, right? Growing up. So maybe I would say if you have a similar love of those style of stories, of comics, of martial arts movies, things like that, then maybe that's where it comes from.
I think there's a lot of things where I'm playing with tropes that if people who have never really people who aren't into like fantasy or superheroes or sci-fi probably wouldn't enjoy it because
Right.
they wouldn't get what you're playing with because
Mhm.
they don't have that background. So I
Right.
suspect like that is also part of it, but I don't know.
Mhm.
He's calling us old. Yeah, yeah, but
And, Bo says as well, "Do you plan to kill off more booktubers in future books?"
yeah. I very badly Tuckerized Petrick in this book. Petrick.
Oh,
Um,
that's true, yes, actually. I noticed that and I was like, "Is it really? No."
Oh yeah, no, that's Petrick. Because he was
Okay.
Tuckerized by someone else, and he mentioned in a video. I was like, I'm going to do it too. And then I thought it would be funny because he has a history of being Tuckerized. There's a lot of little winks and nods to the
Mhm.
community. Like there's a dripping bucket in the book.
Yeah,
Only mentioned
right.
once, but it's there.
Yeah,
There's little winks and nods that I mean, I don't know anyone who will get every joke in this book other than me, right? Because some of
right.
them are just like too obscure, but you're not going to notice that you're not getting like if you've never heard the dripping bucket, it's not going to bother you. Like, where did that come from? You're just going to, oh, there's a name for an inn, whatever. You're not going to care. But
So sales pitch here is find the Easter eggs, read the books, and find the Easter eggs.
there's a lot. There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of them. So target audience, yeah, I think it's just anyone who likes genre fiction. Um,
Mm,
I do think that there's stuff in here that's going to appeal a little bit more. People have watched some anime, this or
mhm.
seen some kung fu movies. Like if you've
Yeah,
seen Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, I bet it'll help you appreciate this book, or any of that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I don't think too much about my target reader. Like I write the what I want, what I love.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope other people like it, but I'm not trying too hard to figure out who they are. Like I
No,
think about
that's
it after.
fair.
Yeah,
You write what you love first, and then
but it's not my
it'll
day
find its
job.
readers.
It's not my day job, right?
Mhm.
I don't. It's not like I'm not gonna make a mortgage payment if I can't sell books.
Yes.
Paleontologist,
Right.
yeah. Oh God, my dinosaurs are not accurate. So, but that's okay. They're not really dinosaurs. So the wedge.
So let's dive into the fighting style that you opted for in partial function here, because you went with the, is it Bagua?
Bagua.
Bagua fighting style. So what is this fighting technique?
Okay, so this guy named Steve Perry wrote a series of science fiction novels called the Matador series, starting with The Man Who Never Missed. This is late '80s, early. He's still writing, and then a new one came out like a year ago, but mostly
Okay.
a long time ago. And in it, he basically invented a martial art called like the 97 steps. And he like explained it, and the guy's training it. And it's like they become like nearly unstoppable fighters and they use it. But if you read it, and if you've done a lot of martial arts and you read its description of how it works, kind
Okay.
of makes sense. Like it kind of works, right? A little bit.
Right.
It passes the sniff test. And I always thought this was amazing, right? Like it's not a real martial art. He doesn't really, but he's a martial art. He's trained a lot. So he's
Mm.
not like talking from a position of ignorance. So I always thought it'd be cool to have something like that. And then, so Bagua is a real martial art. It's a Chinese internal art. I am not trained in it. I've listened to people talk about it. I've read about it. That's it. I have zero training in this. And
Right.
a big part of the art is literally walking in circles. It's a big part of the
Okay.
training. The same way, Tai Chi, they have the Tai Chi forms, they walk in circles in a very particular way. So circle walking is a huge part of their training. That is absolutely true. And then this whole notion of doing an infinity walk where you walk in how do I get on the camera? Walk in a little figure eight, an infinity symbol.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
actually a thing they do in like certain kinds of physical therapy type scenarios to like help
Mm.
build coordination because you're staring at one spot, your body's constantly turning, so you've got to like maintain this angle with your head. It's like nervous system training, um,
Hmm.
and people do it as like a warm up before like a football game, and like certain like high level coaches would talk about how great infinity walks are for like certain kinds of like rehab situations. I'm not saying it's magical. So I thought, what if you combine these two? Does this actually make sense? I have no idea, right? I haven't trained in Bagua, and I don't really understand Infinity, but I thought this would be cool. So I had this idea
Hmm.
years ago, and I never got a chance to use it. And I'm like, damn it, I'm writing a martial arts story. I'm putting it in here. If it hadn't been in here, it would have been like something I would have used with the hybrid helix. Um,
Right.
Now, the idea that when you do this, you're cultivating your internal energy, and then you can shoot energy blast out of your hand, that's obviously not realistic. But why, that's the kind of story I wanted to tell. So, because that's cool. It's cool if you can like punch a T-Rex in the face and knock
Yeah.
it out, right? That you can't do that with real martial arts, but you can do it with fake martial arts. So that's where the Bagua thing came from. So, and then in the world, I'm like, well, how do I explain how these people in the secondary
Mm.
world know Bagua? So that's where I decided I'm going to make this world a reverse portal fantasy.
Okay.
Their world, and they say it in the book, right? Their world
Hmm.
has been visited by people from our world
Okay.
in the
Yeah.
past who you never meet. They're never named. You don't know their
Yeah.
stories. So that's like, okay, why do they have like names that come from our culture? Well, they took the great warrior comes from abroad, right? Helps you
Right.
fight the monsters that rampage down your street. You're going to name your kid after them. And
Yeah.
that's the name people use, right? Like
Yeah.
20 generations later, they don't remember where it came from. So I get to steal all the cultural elements I want from our world by making it a reverse portal fantasy. I thought that was
Interesting.
very clever of me. I was very proud of myself for thinking of that. So
And
clearly, some guy from like China or from this world somewhere.
mm,
People train Bagua everywhere. Um,
right.
Learned Bagua, went to this other place sometime in the past. No one knows who he is. Taught them Bagua, called them that, and then the rest is history. Made up history.
Yeah. Well, that's the benefit of fantasy is you can make whatever you want to make. And Nicholas' comment here, to be fair, no one has tried it with real martial arts with
There you go. Yeah,
you know,
that's true.
punching that T-Rex.
That's true. But like, I feel like it adds something to fantasy stories. It helps the suspension of disbelief
Mm.
when there are threads of it that feel real. Like,
Yeah.
that's why when there's a vampire in a story, it's a little easier to swallow than if it's some made up mythical creature that's not part of any of our like mythos. right? Like
Hmm.
if you have it's a thingamajig that has these power sets and you've never heard of it
Yeah.
before. I just made it up for my story. But if it's a vampire and it's similar to
Mm.
vampires from our lore, we buy it more easily, even though we know vampires aren't
Mhm.
real. It's easier to suspend disbelief for that stuff. So I was like, I like to do that wherever I can. I like to make the
Right.
things feel a little more grounded because
Okay.
I feel it helps immersion.
I would agree with that, and it also adds to me. I would imagine it adds a little bit of an easier step in familiarity,
Yeah,
right? Many of the people who are reading your book are going to be familiar with the concept of a vampire,
yeah,
so it's going to be a little bit easier to get your readers to
right,
feel more comfortable with that concept. So yeah, I can see that.
right.
So you had mentioned your world. Can we go back and talk about the world that you've built a little bit? And that you can keep it spoiler free, whatever you want to do, however much you want to explain. But if it is going to contain spoilers, I just say that you let people know quickly.
I'll talk at a higher level and sort of
Okay.
say my world building is all backwards. So I start
Oh,
with what do I want to happen, and then I figure out how do I build a world that gives us that. So,
okay.
so one of the big things, well, and then there are elements that I just like I like a big backstory, which is why like the backstory of the hybrid helix and the whole world goes back hundreds of millions of years, and it's like
Mm,
sentient octopi because octopuses, octopi, whatever they're called, um, because it's just kind of cool if you're
yeah.
like, oh, like the old ones are really old and they're from the
Mhm.
oceans from like hundreds of millions of years ago. It's just better than 5,000 years ago to me. I just like that stuff.
Right.
So I put a lot, and then it's like what's like in this case the world building. A lot of it is I work backwards. I want a place where the people fight monsters, where the
Mm,
monsters are kind of a constant threat, and and that's how you're have a retired monster hunter, right? Everyone has these. Why do
mhm.
people develop these incredible martial skills? They need it because they have to stop the T Rex that's going to eat their kids.
Yeah.
And then why the T
Yeah.
Rexes keep coming? So then I was like, well, I have this scenario where the T Rexes keep coming because I developed it for the hybrid helix
Mm,
already. So it's always working backwards. It's always like, what do I want? What do I like? If I want a guy punching a spaceship, what's the magic system and the setting that I need to make it a scenario where a guy's punching a spaceship? But I don't start with, the magic system is based on like Cartesian dualism because it is, right? But I
right.
don't start with Cartesian dualism. I start with guy punching a spaceship and I work backwards. How do I get there? How do I get
Right.
it so that the guy punching the spaceship makes sense? Um,
Okay.
and that's how it all works. I imagine how do I get a magic system where you get like magical kung fu? Well,
Mm,
you get this sort of very vague. Everyone has like life energy, and we can all use it to like hit things really hard, and then you can specialize it and do fancier, more specific things, but only if you're in a certain family. That's like standard
mm,
stuff, but it gives you these cool
mm.
fight scenes. It's to get
Yeah.
the cool fight scenes, right? This guy can use like sound powers, and he can fly, and
Mhm.
this guy can teleport, and like I really like the whole image of like because you got Ju, she can create little wormholes, right?
Right.
That's kind of
Yeah.
these cool fight
That's
scenes.
pretty,
She's like,
yeah.
she's like, I'm gonna punch to the side and look, my fist has hit you in the back of the head, and it's like,
Yeah.
and like we've seen this in video games, but like it's a cool power set, and then this other person can do other stuff that's totally different, and then they interact, and then you get the the,
Mhm.
the, the mishmash, and then you get
Yeah.
Remy who's a bear, so he gets to like recharge while he's sleeping.
Yeah, I would love that.
I came up with that in a spur of the moment. That was not planned. And then,
As as a
yeah,
sleep-deprived parent, I would love that.
yeah, I remember those days. I feel for you.
Yeah.
I'm past them. My kids are all past that
Yeah.
waking up in the middle of the night stage, but I've been there. So,
Yeah, it's
I remember.
tricky.
Yeah, yeah, I recall. So that's my thing about world building. I feel like if you spend too much time world building without that end goal in mind of what you want in the story, and then working back, if you do too much without that, you end up people can end up with a lot of stuff they don't ever use, and it doesn't really work.
Mm, okay.
And but if you keep in mind, I want like horse battles with huge armies on
Mm,
horseback on a wide open plain. Like, oh, the whole Ring World started. I started writing on Ring Worlds because I wanted elves riding griffins for a D&D campaign I ran in like 1990.
oh, wow.
But why would elves ride griffins? Right? Like
Yeah.
you need to have a huge like tract of land to like
Mm,
you need a huge like space where it makes sense, where you would need to ride a griffin to like track your
Yeah.
cattle or whatever. But I actually calculated it. I actually spent time, right?
Oh,
And
did you?
yeah, it had to be like thousands of miles for the
Okay.
griffin thing to make sense, right? And I'm like, well, and then I put that like valley, this hidden valley of griffin riding elves on a world, and I realized this is like take up like half of South America. And you
Okay.
got a hidden valley that takes up like a quarter of the landmass of the planet because it's not going to stay hidden. So now I was like,
Yeah.
how do I put this somewhere? I got a ring world, and I've been using
Mm.
ring worlds ever since. It started with elves riding griffins 30 years ago,
Interesting.
right?
Yeah.
So everything's backwards.
Hmm.
I need to.
That, yeah, it goes back pretty far then for your world building.
There are elements of it that literally go back 30 years. That's not even a joke.
Wow.
Elements of it, not you know,
Hmm. Well,
and I get to reuse it because I didn't publish any of that stuff. If I
yeah.
had, you'd be like, dude, like stealing from yourself. Like, come on, come up with a new idea. But I never publish
Right.
it. You guys don't know how much I'm stealing from
Right. Well, no, I wouldn't say that's stealing from yourself. That's like building a catalog of ideas and then picking the ones that you like and putting them into the story that you want to tell.
you. That's how you get a lot of elements in a story. People are like, how come there's so much stuff packed in here? I'm like, because I have 30 years worth of junk in my head that I've accumulated. So I have, I can throw stuff in there. So that's
Oh,
how that
that
happens.
there you go. So, when it comes to your fighting scenes, how much research do you do? Or do you just go with what you know?
I go with what I know, and then a lot of the fight scenes, it's set up, right. You have to set up
Mm.
different kinds of scenarios. If you write your book so that your main character is constantly meeting someone tough and they have to fight and defeat them and then move on, it's very hard not to let that feel repetitive.
Right.
And right, so what you try to do is have fight scenes where in each one, not in each one, but there's a lot of variety. So now I'm fighting you, but just to buy time so that this guy can like pick the lock so we can escape. And
Okay.
now I'm fighting you, but I'm really trying to get you to like blast the thing behind me so that because
Mm.
I'm setting you up to take the fall for something you don't even understand, and
Right.
then I want to escape, right? So and then it's just I just have an enormous backlog of ridiculous fight scenes in my head
Mm.
from watching a lot of bad movies over a lot of
Right.
years. And I'm not really hung up on making them. I've seen people talk about fights. It's like you got to make them realistic. You know, when you get cut with a sword, it does this much damage. You don't just walk away from
Mm.
that. I'm like, screw that. You know, we're gonna walk away from that all the time, right? Because I don't know. Like, if you're writing fantasy and if you're writing gritty, realistic fantasy, that's
Mm.
fine. You have to make the fights realistic, but
Mhm.
that's why I don't
Yeah,
want
you
that.
have a different style.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
want my characters, like Rohan has powers that make him like you
Mhm.
can throw him through a wall, he's gonna be okay. He's gonna
Yeah.
brush the the concrete dust off his shoulders and get back in the fight.
Yeah.
And I like that. I think that's cool. So I make sure my magic works so that can happen, and
Mm.
the world building works so that can
Mm.
happen. And again, it's all working backwards. If you want
Yeah,
the guy
and
brushing concrete dust off his shoulders and getting back in there, then you've got to write the magic system that lets that happen. And if
yeah.
you want it realistic, then you don't get that. But
Well, and that's it too, right? Is, going back to that superhero,
yeah.
stories and those areas. For me, those moments of when they get knocked down and come back up, those were always like the, "Oh, snap," moments, right? Because that's when they get a little bit mad and
Yeah,
and it starts to show.
yeah. That's fun.
Um,
That's where the fun happens.
so I'm gonna do a final call for the live chat. If you have questions for Joe, throw those in the chat
All
now, and, we'll keep trekking over the next, like, couple minutes here, but we'll wrap up soon. I would like to know if you could share anything with future readers, what would you like to share? What would you like them to know?
Enjoy what you read.
Mm.
Enjoy
Important.
what you read. So you're gonna find, you're gonna find there'll be people who tell you like, oh, you should like this or you should like that, and I know people will, I read Robin Hobb and I loved it. Okay, great.
Mhm.
Or someone else, I read Robin Hobb and I kept reading him, but I didn't enjoy him. It's too slow. Whatever. Don't
Yeah.
read him anymore, right? Like this is not it's not there's no test at the end.
Mhm.
Find what brings you joy, and if you're 30 and you like comic books, read comic books. I
Yeah.
made this mistake, right? I stopped reading comic books for a little while because I was like, I'm too old. I should move on to more serious stuff. It was dumb.
Mm.
Read what brings you joy, because you know you can challenge yourself, read something new here and there that maybe you won't like, and just to see, that's great. But
Yeah.
read what you love, and if the, you know what I write is what I think is fun, and it's
Mhm.
not really, it's not to everyone's taste, and that's totally fine. But find what you do like. I say this at the end of my YouTube video. Like, I hope you find something to read that you love, and if you find
Mhm.
books that's my. I hope that first. But if not,
Yeah.
find something else.
Absolutely. That's why we have DNFs.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
not for nows even. If it's just
yeah.
not your mood right now, try again
I
later
know
if you
people
really
DNF.
want.
I know people DNF partial function. Like, okay, I'm sorry it didn't
Yeah.
work for you. I tried to
Yeah.
write a book you would like. I promise.
Mhm.
Didn't work. Okay, that's okay.
Yeah,
That's okay. That happens.
absolutely. And, we have a message from Derek here. "May the space bears live long and prosper."
Remember, I got to get to book 5, Eyes of Empire.
Oh.
Cat people. We're gonna get cat people.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I'm gonna put dinosaurs on the next cover. I'm like, no. Next cover will not have dinosaurs. Probably cat people.
Cat people.
Cat people. No dinosaurs
Okay.
in book 5, or not a major plot point. So
Okay.
yeah, and I gotta figure out the exactly what happens in that book. I'm almost ready to work on that, but I'm working on a different thing right now. So
Okay, yes. Dwarves.
dwarves, cursed dwarves, and magical dogs.
The dogs, love the dogs.
I don't know why I didn't give Rohan a dog, or I should have given Rohan a dog earlier on. We met the
Be
cat.
hard to cart around in space, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you could do it, but yeah, people love dog. I don't know. It's very strange.
Yeah.
I don't know
I
why.
mean, I think it's just, a staple pet that many people have had if or are familiar with. Usually they're just so innocent and, lovable.
People like animal companions a lot.
Yeah.
I forget that.
Yeah.
I do too. I mean, I used to love the Pern books. There was a
Mm.
whole Harper Halls of Pern, I think, where they had the little tiny dragons that were
Okay.
their pets. They'd ride on their shoulders, right? The dragon
Yeah.
riders had the big dragons, and then the other ones had the little ones. And I thought they were fantastic. I was a little.
Yeah.
My mom gave this book to me when I was like 12 or 10.
I mean, they make those. At the con I went to, there was, some people sitting at their tables with the little, like, toy dragons that they could, like, move around.
Oh, that's
That
cute.
was so cool.
That's cool. That sounds great. That sounds great.
So, thank you so much, Joe, for sitting with me today, answering our questions, and congratulations again on Partial Function, the release of it,
Thank you.
and cheers to many more stories because I am looking forward to more.
And thanks for hosting my launch party.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for anyone who is watching now or in the replay, make sure you go in the description below. There will be links to follow Joe's YouTube channel, check out his books, all the good stuff. So be sure to be checking that out as well. And as always, take care of yourselves, everyone.